Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Gruver, and we are so excited to bring you another amazing guest. So excited to have a conversation with this lady. Dr. Pat Boulognes is here. Hey, Dr. Pat, how you doing?
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Good, good. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got to this point, and we'll have a good chat.
Well, I have a textured background, and I have a very diverse background. I'm originally from the Midwest. So, what I always talk about when I'm meeting people from the Midwest and you guys from California is there's always an immediate camaraderie,
Well,
and
even people from California, because my family came from the Midwest in the Depression, right? Yeah.
See, so it's like our DNA.
Yeah.
It's the DNA, and we're not all not our DNA too, and that. So when I was in the Midwest, as a kid, I used to always be really interested in science. I used to try to do things like train bees. Put them in a jar, roll the heck out of them. My father just said, make sure you're pointing that jar the opposite direction of where you're standing, and do things like that. So I ended up going to school, chiropractic school. I used to live in Ann Arbor first, and then I decided not to be a medical doctor. I did some volunteer work for an independent study for my undergraduate degree at the University of Michigan Hospital and St. Joe's Hospital. They were connected. And a friend of mine said, you've got all the requirements to be a chiropractor. You should be a chiropractor. And I went, why would I want to do that? And he goes, because you can help people get well and not use medicine, and have them function better. And I went, I don't know. I don't think I want to do that, And then a couple months afterwards, I was working as a waitress and working on an MBA. I dropped out of my MBA program. I hurt my shoulder and went in to see this chiropractor in Ann Arbor. And I was watching him, do what he did in the office, like walk around and such. And I decided then he was never going to touch me. And that was my first thing. My second thing was I figured if he did it, I could do it and I could do it better. And so I applied to school and I went and I never looked back. I've had some incredible teachers in my time that, always had that, one of my MOs is do good, have fun. Another MO of mine is, what you got isn't necessarily what you got. And then, from that time span, then I found other people that I learned, significant things from, like Jeff Bland, who's out on the West Coast. He's alive and well. And so he always talked about, functional medicine. I was like, what the heck is functional medicine? And then he had a company in Gig Harbor, and that was connected with a company that I still use products of theirs because I found that I get the best results with them. That's Metagenics. And so, and I apply my programs that I give to people. I do them myself. I recently had a really bad case of an allergic reaction, food poisoning, acute, that, within 3 days after getting my program, I started a particular medical food and that I felt so much better, and I did some other weird things that, a friend of mine called me up he was a PhD from Melbourne, Schweitzer, right? And he said, oh, do you know what he used in the jungle for dysentery? And so we had these, I had all these people kind of recross my path, my ex-acupuncturist. We all got in contact with each other right around the same time. And they really shared these tidbits of wisdom for things like that, which made a big difference.
That's
so
cool.
I was on Cape Cod for 10 years. Then I went to Boston for 10 years. And then I decided to go to acupuncture school. And so when I went to acupuncture school, people always asked me, because I studied my formulas and herbs in Mandarin. People always asked me, what were you going to do when you're finished with that? I said, retire. This is really a lot of work. And I never realized how much brain power that really sucked out of me during that, 2.5, 3 year program, that I was in. And, so even like, a year later, I was still thinking like, why do I want to sleep in the morning? It's just like, you just really, use a lot of brain power study. So I have this in my toolbox of how I help people. I've learned things like, doing myofascial release, in particular, people's applied kinesiology, how to use needles for an emotional, to get rid of the emotional component so that you can really go deep quickly, as opposed to waiting 2 or 3 months while, trying to figure something out. And I'm a sports physician too. So I've worked things like the Boston Marathon. I worked at Special Olympics when it first came out at Harvard, and just had some really wonderful, great experiences helping sick people get well and well people to maintain their wellness, and also offering people information, excuse me, so that, you could get the information that you needed so that you can make an educated decision about what's best for me to go forward. Not me, meaning me, Dr. Pat, but meaning, whoever I was, helping with.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to go back to something you said, which is you met someone who explained functional medicine. For people at home who have heard that term or aren't familiar with that term, what is functional medicine?
It's the paradigm shift from the world is flat to the world is round in medicine. And so what it does is it's very individualistic. So it takes what's going on with a person, their whole person, and how they're interacting with their environment. Whether it's the food that you eat, the water you drink, the air that you breathe, the chemicals that you use in your house to clean your house, or the fertilizer, gardening things, and how that interacts with you, and then how your body's responding to it. Because if your immune system is totally blown out and you have constant perpetual exposure to that, you eventually develop things like chronic illness and disease, and that take away from your good health and take away from your precious time on the planet, and also interfere with your relationships with your, parents, family, friends. It limits your mobility. It's always like when you're saying those things, I always say pain is not a lifestyle. And it's not, it's just an indicator that something's going on. And the idea is to be a CSI agent and figure out where the heck is that, like, where's the inflammation at? Because all the reasons why we get sick, when you look at it from a functional medicine point of view, is there 3 basic reasons why we get sick. One's trauma, which creates inflammation, and that starts at birth. And then you have the toxins. We just talked about that a couple seconds ago. I mentioned the air, the water, the food that we eat. And then you have your thoughts, and thoughts can undo anything, a good chunk of whatever you do good to get your mechanics in alignment, like by seeing a chiropractor, osteopath, or whoever, and also can undo, the things that you eat. We all know that, like, oh, I just ate a really great meal and I'm really happy about it. Then you get upset and you're not digesting your food, and then you stay up, you're not getting sleep. There's a whole, big dynamic with what I call 5 pillars of health, like diet and nutrition are 2 different things, even though under the same umbrella. I mean, you could have, unless you have great nutrition with your diet, then there could be a component that's out of place there. A piece of the puzzle's gone. Proper exercise, proper sleep, positive mental attitude's huge, and that properly functioning nervous system that really, is integral with the, your posture, how you're standing, how you hold yourself, where your head's at, on your body, and where, what your spine looks like. So it's huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, did you get all
that? I'm like still processing half of what you just said. I've taken some notes too, but it's, it always fascinates me to meet people like you.
Thank you.
Because I'm kind of the same way in that it looks like you've studied lots of different things. You've looked at different ways of thinking about some of this stuff, and then you're picking those good things that work and bringing them into a way that you can help that individual as an individual. Right.
For sure.
Because again, we've talked with lots of people, hypnotherapists, other, types of therapists, the gamut of a lot of different people. and what always interests me is some things work better for certain people and other things don't, right? So it's like trying to be like that CSI agent that you just talked about. What is it that Jason or Kathy needs? Because we are different individuals than other people, and you're doing that. You're helping people at that individual level.
Sometimes on that intuitive part, if I ever do acupuncture on somebody, I always, when I'm looking at the emotional component, I use kinesiology on meridian points that I'm interested in for those particular reasons. And, a lot of times people end up crying, not because I didn't even use any needles yet, because I'm like, what's going on? Tell me what's going on with X, Y, and Z. And one of my mentors always used to say, what you got isn't necessarily what you got. And that's why you have to cut through those layers. And, and it's also being able to like read in between the lines, and like listening to what people are saying, and doing just like, just being open and just, to say like, well, did you ever think of this for a solution? Because I love solving problems. It's just like a friend of mine said, that's what your book, Why You're Sick, Fat, and Tired. That's what it does, is it solves someone's problem. It shows somebody where to start their health journey, so they're not wasting time, energy, or money someplace else. And I have, I found that gift that I've been given to do that, and I use it pretty extensively a lot of time.
That's so great. And that's why we have you on. So you use the term chiropractic. I think pretty much everybody now at this point knows what a chiropractor does. You said acupuncture, though people might not understand the exact how of it. I think they've heard of it. So explain to people what kinesiology is, because I know what that is, but a lot of people don't. So how do you use kinesiology, and what is that system?
Well, kinesiology can give you a subclinical value. And so if you are proficient at muscle testing, you can enter somebody's energy field. Like Michael Gerber wrote a book years ago, which the name exactly escapes me, but it's a book that took me like 2 years to read. It was very heavy, and it was written for the layperson. But, we have energy fields around us. So if you can get into somebody's energy field and learn a specific technique for that kinesiology, my technique was TBM, or total body modification, is what it means. And also NHT, just Scott Walker, who's still in he's in San Diego area. And taking those things and like learning how to those acupuncture points, because they relate to acupuncture points, how do we get in there and be able to help somebody get that information from them? Like, what do they really need? Like how many, sometimes I use it to, well, if I want, I call it pulsing. Someone like how much, how many of the natural supplement do you need to take to get you, to refill your bank? And how many days do you need to do it in? It's just a subclinical level. It's not, black and white. And there's a lot of gray area to it. And sometimes you can't test somebody because you can't get into that field with them. And so I always say, go with the flow, do it next time, no big deal. But the kinesiology is when you test, when something makes somebody test stronger, a point, then it's usually indicative that it's a good thing for someone, whatever it is. Sometimes when I'm, first testing people, when they're disbelievers, I use things like mustard, ketchup, things that are like, what do you got in your purse? And or your cell phone. Someone tested me one time on a cell phone that had a EMF blocker in it. And, I tested strong, and this person looked at me and said, you must have some device on you, and I did. I have my Q-Link that I wear all the time. And and when I lived in B airspace in Boston, and I was trying to first study for acupuncture, I couldn't focus because you had all this stuff going on in downtown Boston. And after I did this, it was like I could just sit in front of a computer. I felt protected, and I could concentrate very significantly for hours sometimes. So kinesiology is just a way to have be able to use like a typewriter to get into someone's energy field and get into their body to see if whatever you have to offer them, is something that's complementary for for their well-being.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Jason, you had an idea.
Well, as you were talking, I was remembering. So again, I'm still kind of new to the kinesiology side of it, and so as you're talking about it, but I remember my younger brother, he actually did some therapy stuff to begin with. So tell me if this is what it kind of actually is.
Mhm.
But he would, the therapist would put like salt in his hand and then have him hold out his arm, and he'd kind of push on his arm, and he'd put metal in his hand and kind of do some different things like that to kind of get a feel for, what made him stronger, versus
Yeah.
weaker kind of thing.
Mhm.
That's kind of what you're talking about there a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that you can use food, you can use your environment, you can use like um, for somebody like can you drink coffee, right? Everyone it's just like people either like it or they don't. But if they drink coffee, some people probably should never have it, and it might just be a certain brand of coffee because coffees have a tendency to have mold in them if they're not stored properly. And so if you're testing somebody on coffee, you could have coffee that doesn't have mold or mold, and you could test people on to see, just to give you a subclinical level of whether or not something's working for somebody or something's really detracting, from that person's health and wellness in their energy field.
Yeah, so effectively, as you're testing people with those different things, because it's close to them or on their person, you're kind of in their energy field. And so you
Uh-huh.
can then see how the energy of them is interacting with whatever it is that you're testing
Uh-huh.
against.
I always go on the basis of whether or not a person wants to have that happen. So like, someone's like, they might want to have that happen, but it might not be an energetic day for them to do it. So I ask the body for permission
Mm-hmm.
before I perform that type of service. And so, how I do it is by muscle testing. So there's an entry point right between your eyebrows, that you just place two fingers on when I muscle test somebody. And if that test's weak, then I'm good to go. Because they're saying, I'm asking, can I get in? And their energy field's going down. So it's like, bingo. And then, if I can't, then there's a little trick of trade that I learned to like confuse the body a little bit and see if I could still do it. Because I have them just keep their eyes open and shake their head. And I go back and I muscle test again. And if it stayed strong, then I would just say like, next time, we'll do it
Because
later.
whatever they're resisting,
Yeah.
allowing you to kind of come in and see what's going on.
Right. And I always learned from Viktor Frankl, who did the total body modification, that you first have to fix structure before you do any of the stuff anyway. So you've got to have somewhere to start to help somebody, because structure is function. If you don't have good structure, then you can't have good function. Yeah. And so you've got to, always go to basics. Let's fix the basics. Let's fix the foundation, and then you can have fun, and do a lot of other different things.
That's cool. You had also talked about inflammation, and I know that was a huge buzz a couple of years back. There was about chronic inflammation and foods that are inflammatory and drinks that are inflammatory. How does that inflammation affect the body, and how do we help get rid of that?
Well, there's, when you talked about, just mentioned food, one of the things about food is that people sometimes can have reactivity to food and not have that reactivity show till about 4 or 5 days later. So it's really difficult. Like when you're looking at, like in an immediate way, is like when you eat food, if you get tired after you eat, or you feel like my stomach, kind of feel like the other day I went out and I had I was feeling like I wanted to have a beer. And I took like 4 sips, for drinks of it. And I put it down. I could just feel it when it hit my stomach. It was like splash, thinking, I don't think this is a good idea. Paid for it, left. I have my beer fixed for the whole summer.
Yeah,
and so
you're a cheap date
for beer. I do like champagne, but when you're having food and people have that, that inflammation, like for instance, if somebody has pain, they have low back pain, neck pain, they have chronic fatigue, those kind of things, they should really pay attention to how they feel in the morning when they first get up. And if they're achy, they're sore, they've got something going on someplace, then they should really take a look at what food that they ate. And even when you go through the day and you're eating, if you start feeling like, oh, it's the afternoon, going, God, my low back's killing me. Oh, what did I have? I'm like, oh, I had dessert at lunch. So staying away from sugar, as a sugar or sugar substitutes, is really a good thing. A lot of people think having sugar substitutes is okay, but the problem with them is that the sugar substitute makes things a lot worse for your gut, and for you to be able to lose weight. It interferes with that. You actually gain weight with sugar substitutes. And so, taking and looking at like mapping out your food, and mapping is just like, oh, I just ate this. And like an hour and a half later, man, I needed to go lay down. Then you probably had too many carbohydrates in that meal, and if you're not waking up energized, like when, if you want to talk about sleep for a couple of seconds there, because it relates that people who eat late, go to sleep, they never get into that 110-minute cycle, of going from stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 and 4, which is where the magic happens, and then REM. And the only reason why REM happens, like I always think this, like when people walk around, in their sleep, is that they're not exactly in REM, because if they were, they'd be paralyzed. So they, because your body stops moving. And then the magic in 3 and 4 during that cycle was just usually after 30 minutes that you're falling asleep, because that's the light stuff. That's what you want to do during the daytime. You want to go take a nap so you have better cognition, you're thinking better, you're feeling better, you're moving better, you get up and go back into your project, and like you can do more in less time. That's Einstein's time for me. Then that works great. But if you have, are people who are taking melatonin as a supplement, melatonin surges between 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning. So taking it, to me, makes absolutely zero sense if you're going to take it during the daytime as a supplement. It's better to take melatonin like just before you go to bed if you really have a melatonin deficiency. But you might not have a melatonin deficiency. Your deficiency might be is that you're not getting into the deep sleep, because that's where the brain detoxes, the body, the organs detox. That's where all that, like you repair, revitalize, restore. So where all the hormones do what they're supposed to do and get, rebalanced out. So that part of that sleep cycle is so important, and, creating hygiene around your sleep and your ritual around sleep, turning the computer off, or using these glasses at night for for being on a computer, you block out all that blue light from you, and it's like, it's not affecting your limbic system. It's not like, okay, how many more games can I play on my telephone? Or should I clean my closet out again? Or having, that thought process, ruminating, and you can't shut your brain off, I always tell people as a, that hot tip, that health hack is like, if you can do something about what's keeping you up, go do it,
Exactly.
and then give yourself permission to go to sleep. Yep. And if you feel like laying there, then get back up and write those keywords down, because those keywords aren't going to change from the time you close your eyes and actually fall asleep, in that. And then you can use things like binaural beats, white noise. You can chant, you can listen to a book, or something like that, that gets you back into that more sleepy stage.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because I've done so many talks about sleep, and I used to, when I did my workplace wellness talks, I talked about sleep and food and all that thing. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're laying there agonizing on whether you paid the mortgage or not, get up and look. Like, don't try to convince you, like, go see if the stove is on, go see. I remember waking up in the middle of the night. I used to wear 4 rings, and during massage, of course, I have to take the rings off. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and for some reason, if I don't feel my rings when I'm asleep, it kind of freaks me out somehow. So I woke up in the middle of the night, and I could feel that I only had 3 of my 4 rings on. And the one that wasn't there was my grandmother's engagement ring. And I had this panic at like 2 o'clock in the morning of, oh my God, I remember putting them back on. What if I dropped in the parking lot as I was walking to my car? And I couldn't get back to sleep. And I finally said, you know what, screw this. I got to go look. I got in my car. I drove to my office. I found the ring sitting in the dish. I put it back on. I drove home. I went back to sleep. I know that I would have agonized all night long wondering what happened to that ring. So I solved the problem. You know, people, I think so many people feel like they're stuck, they're tied in, they have to stay in bed.
They're
And it's
strapped
like, no.
in.
Yeah, it's like, get up and solve, you know, if it's like you said, if it's something solvable, get up and solve the problem. You know, check on that thing that's worrying you, or do a brain dump, you know, write it all out, promise that you're going to do it in the morning, and then go back to sleep rather than driving yourself crazy. So I'm so glad you said that, because I have told people that for years, to just go solve the problem. So I'm very glad you said that.
You know, it's, and also, you know, I think a big part too is like really, you know, setting the stage, like, you know, and having a bed that supports you. And, you know, when you go to sleep, say your affirmations.
Yeah.
You know, when you're dealing with three brains, and the one that's that you got to keep on knocking off your shoulder, the lizard brain, like, get the heck out of here. I only need you if a saber-toothed tiger is in front of me, or someone's going to try to run into my car and run a red light. You know, that's when I need you. Other than that, leave me alone. Because you have this, you know, relational brain, and you have this reactionary brain, so that you can create better sequencing for positive events. And so when you have something positive that happens to you, you can get just used to, like, you know, scratching your head, you know, at the same place, you know, like every time, you know. And if you start having a lot of them, that'd be really great, right? But, you know, you can click your fingers, you can touch your fingertips. You know, and just tie into something that when you feel really positive. I mean, if you have a boyfriend who has an ex-wife and she always used to sit in one chair, never sit in that chair. You know, that mental association with that is huge. And you know, then there's little tricks of the trade to make that all kind of, you know, piece them together and put the pieces of the puzzle together. You know, that way, then you're stronger, you know, you're more balanced. You're doing things that are beneficial mentally, physically, socially, and spiritually for your body, that makes life a lot easier. And, you know, it just, you know, and, you know, the whole thing, see a chiropractor, have a massage.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to be there with you for your next treatment.
So much stuff. Well, and what you just said about the anchoring, and we had Mike Mandel, who's one of the top hypnotists in the world, on, and he was talking about that awesome anchor that, you know, when you get yourself into that feeling good, you go awesome. And so that way, when you need to feel good, you can look at that and fire that awesome anchor and get that feeling back. So I love that you brought that up too. It all comes back together. Jason, of course we're out of time, because that's what we do. Jason, anything final thoughts for you, and then we'll throw it back to you, Dr. Pat, and you could talk about how people can reach you and all that good stuff.
Well, I think for me, this is one where I got to go back and listen to this one again. Right? This is one of those episodes where it's like, okay, I think I understood what you were saying there, but let me go back and look at that again. But I love the idea, you know, again, as you said, that it really is. I think you mentioned there were five different areas, right? That
yeah,
you know,
like that called 5 pillars of health.
Yeah, the 5 pillars of health, and that really, if any of those are kind of out of whack, then that's probably what's going on, right? And I think that's, you know, that what you got isn't necessarily what you got, right? Is the idea. And the more that I've learned about this and kind of realized, you know, like that when people say, you know, I have this headache, and it's like,
gut.
There's reasons, right? I mean, there's a couple of symptomatic reasons why you have a headache, right? And so, but the more that we get in tune with that and start realizing and thinking about these 5 different areas of our life, the more balanced that we can end up being, right? Because like you said, if somebody only focuses on exercise, let's say they go to the gym like a fiend for, you know, 2 hours a day, but if they're eating, or there's the toxins, or there's the other things in their life, they're still not going to get the full effect out of their body, only focusing on 1 or 2, right?
Well, it's like a large piece of the pie, and you can't really out-exercise a bad diet.
Yeah.
No care who you are, where you are, you can't out-exercise a bad diet. And, you know, you have to honor your body as a sanctuary. And, you know, and if your body is like the energetic field, or, you know, physical field, you know, if there's something that's out of balance, it makes more sense to fix it before it becomes a crisis. You know, Western medicine focuses on that, you know, like, what's the matter with you? What's your symptom? You know, and, you know, people who are practitioners who are in the functional and lifestyle medicine realm are always looking for, you know, what is it? is that the root and what's the cause of it? And then you can go into what, where, when, why, and how to like get out of it, because it isn't really the diagnosis of the disease. It's how are you interacting with the environment that you're in? And then what can I do to make for my next step, going like, okay, where's my weakest link? I want to know where my weakest link is, because I want to fortify it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And right. And so, there's, and that's part of the reason why, that my book shows that, Why You're Sick, Fat, and Tired. It shows that so that you can kind of like identify it. And then you can say, now I know what my New Year's resolution should be. So I can, not like blow out a week later and just blow it off. Now I know where I need to focus so that I can be there for my family, my kids, and, people who really matter to you.
Yeah, I love that. And what a beautiful place to end. Dr. Pat, why don't you tell people where they can get in touch with you, where they can get your book, what's the best site, all that good stuff.
Good. Okay. I will start at the top. My website is healthteamnetwork.com, and people can find me on LinkedIn. That's how we met, on LinkedIn. And I'm sure you'll have show notes with the actual link or right. And then Facebook, I have a business page there, and I use Instagram. And also I'm launching shortly a DYI, Stronger Than Medicine course. That's the basic course for people just to get, some of the stuff that we talked about today, but kind of like start putting the glue together. And that will happen. I'm in the middle of writing that right now. So if somebody wants to get in contact with me, my email address is askdrpat@healthteamnetwork.com. And that's in my book. You can get on Amazon, or there's other digital medias that carry that. But I always send people to Amazon. It's easy. Everyone goes to Amazon, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Barnes and Noble and that type of thing. So that's it.
Yay. This has been such a great conversation.
Yeah.
So right up my alley. I mean, it takes me back to stuff that I was studying and doing years ago that I haven't really thought about in a while. So thank you.
Sometimes that's why you go back to basics.
I know. Exactly. Yeah. It's just about going back to basics. That's absolutely true. The basics: food, water, breathe, poop, put good thoughts in your brain.
And then everything will go.
Everything will go fine. Perfect. This has been such a great conversation, Dr. Pat. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's great.
I'm Kathy Gruber. I can be reached at kathygruber.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, get Dr. Pat's book. I'm going to be doing that afterwards here so that I can get myself a little bit more educated and just start thinking about your whole health. And again, this is probably one of those episodes to go back and listen to again, because there's a lot of stuff in it. So with that, have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.
Awesome.